The reason that I have entered this arena is because they made health political.
Now that Maha has been in office, do you feel that you're getting what you wanted?
I do want more regulation when it comes to health because they're the problem. All the things that are out of my control that they allow. You should not have a generally recognized as safe rule. It should be a that's not food, that's illegal rule.
You benefited from this open debate that Charlie stood for.
Yes.
The big tent. Should the big tent have borders?
We saw this on the left. If you're going to engage with people that hold positions that are irrefutably unacceptable to a civilized society, it is your job to have counter speech and dismantle those positions. Young boys will fall victim to this. They already are, to the tune of millions.
Jillian, make me slender, fit, and smart in 1 hour. We ready?
All I have to do is blink. You're already all of those things. I wish there was work to be done, but you seem like you've managed it all on your own till now.
I don't think so. But okay, let's start with you.
Okay.
So how did you get into the world of fitness? It seems like kind of like a dream job, but I can't imagine it was that easy.
It was that easy because I think it was fated. When you do what you love, per Oscar Wilde, the universe conspires on your behalf. It's kind of a boring story. I've told it a lot, so I'll try to be quick. I was an overweight kid. Food was a way that I bonded with my father, who was also overweight. It was a way I found comfort and control as a kid. And my mom, when I was about 12 years old, had the foresight to get me into martial arts. I had expressed an interest. I was going through some stuff at school. My parents were going through a divorce. So she did, in fact, do that. It got me into martial arts. And over many years, roughly 5 years, I began to understand that when you feel strong physically, you feel strong in every facet of your life. And by the time I'm 17 years old, I'm training for my black belt at this point. I started to really lose the weight around 15. So by 17, I was fit. I was inspired by Linda Hamilton and Terminator 2. And some of those famously fit bodies of the 90s, like Madonna. And I'm at the gym, I'm working out. And people are approaching me, asking me, how much do I charge? And in my mind, I'm like, for what? What are you talking about? It turns out that they were wondering or thinking I was a fitness trainer. And I thought, geez, I'm making like $5 or $6 an hour delivering barbecue and pizza from these little 2 restaurants in a mini mall. Can I make $15 an hour doing this? And my mom helped me get my first little training certification. And the rest is history. There were a few bumps and bruises along the way to get where I am today, to find myself sitting at this table, fortunate enough to speak with you. But that's really kind of how it all began, very organically.
So I have this thing that I say, abs are made in the kitchen. Do you agree?
Yes and no. It depends on the person. So if it's somebody like you or me who is in maintenance mode, the answer is yes. If you don't overeat, then you're not going to put on excess body fat. And you can manage a healthy regimen, kind of getting away with murder, if you manage what you eat and how much you eat. And there are weeks I don't get to the gym like more than once, but I know how to manage it with my food. If you're a person who is obese or morbidly obese, you have to exercise. You simply cannot starve off the weight. The calories, they don't add up. And, over a very long period of time on very dramatic drugs that starve you, I mean, you can get, smaller, but you're also going to compromise a lot of muscle along the way. So how you effectively take excess body fat off of an individual who is 50 pounds, 100 pounds overweight is you bring their calorie intake down to a baseline, somewhere 1,800 calories for a man, 1,500 calories for a woman, and I give them unlimited greens. But if they're burning, let's say that woman who's eating 1,400 calories is burning 1,600 calories in a day, if you got to burn roughly 3,500 calories extra to lose a pound of body fat, it's going to take you a heck of a long time. You're going to be averaging like 2 pounds a month. And if it's that time of the month or you've had something salty and you're holding a little bit of water weight, it's going to look like nothing, which is why people think that diets don't work. They do work. What you're not appreciating is that you've stopped gaining weight. No one takes that into account because they've been actively gaining weight.
Right.
They've stopped that, and they're gradually putting the car in reverse. But by adding exercise into the mix, you're accelerating that calorie deficit significantly. So now I'm able to get weight off of people, and they're able to get it off of themselves at a much quicker pace. And they see results, it's working, they feel motivated, and there's momentum there. There's inertia there to keep them going. So for people who have weight to lose, exercise is an absolutely critical component. For people who don't, you kind of can get away with murder managing your diet, but exercise is the number one form of preventative medicine, and I would be extremely irresponsible if I didn't say that.
You mentioned calories. So does it matter where you get your calories from? I've had people who sat in this seat who have said to me that they have gone full on carnivore, only meat. And thanks to that, they not only have lost weight, but they became healthier. Vinny Tortorich told me that he has been over 30 years cancer-free because he starved his body off of sugar by eating only meat. I had Michael Milken sitting in that exact seat, who has been in remission from cancer, who told me that he ate for 2 years only raw vegetables. And he starved his body from cancer. And of all the treatments, I mean, he's a very wealthy person. He had many great doctors and option for treatments, and really feels like at the end of the day, it was his microbiome treatment, what he had done with food.
There's something to that, by the way, but we'll get to that. So
you have two different people with almost two different food religions, I guess we can call it, who say if you only eat meat or if you only eat veggies, you can really heal yourself and be healthier.
First of all, I went to school with Michael Milken's son, Greg. So hi, Mike, if you're watching. Now then, calories. What's the goal? If the goal is bigger to smaller, calories will work. Period. End of story. It's the first law of thermodynamics. Energy is not created or destroyed in a vacuum. Fat is stored energy. A calorie is a unit of energy. If I was to say to you, what weighs more, a pound of diamonds or a pound of feathers, your answer is going to be, they weigh the same. A calorie is a calorie is a calorie. Now then, having said that, are there health benefits associated with being smaller? Absolutely. There's a halo effect with weight loss because excess body fat has a host of side effects and 170 comorbidities that go along with it. Having said that, what's more valuable, a pound of diamonds or a pound of feathers? So the nutrients that accompany those calories, or the anti-nutrients that accompany those calories, have an impact on your health over time significantly. So in our Venn diagram of bigger, smaller, it's a calories game. And contrary to popular belief, the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity has been debunked. And this basically means, no, it's all about carbs. No, there are very good PhDs in nutrition science who have debunked this. A couple of good people to talk to would be Dr. Lane Norton, Dr. Joseph Munoz. They can break this down for you in detail, but it does come down to calories in, calories out, or weight. And one more thing I'll say, if someone goes, well, you eat a steak and it's going to be more thermogenic, more metabolic than a Twinkie, nominally, but it's still calories in, calories out because we're folding in which foods facilitate a greater calorie burn. Okay, now, having said that, when it comes to health, if you've got a spectrum that ranges from the standard American diet to, let's say, the ideal diet, whatever that may be right now, right? Anything's better than that.
Sure.
So I can go keto. I improved all my biomarkers and I lost weight from here. Okay. Carnivore. I improved all my biomarkers and I lost weight from here. Vegan. I improved all my biomarkers and I lost weight from here. If I was to compare all of these diets with what I personally believe to be a Mediterranean diet, I'm going to go from here to here. I improved all my biomarkers and I lost weight. Now, this is because, and I recommend, if this is something people are interested in, I suggest they look into the work of Dr. William Lee, who wrote Eat to Beat Disease and Eat to Beat Your Diet. When you have exceptionally restrictive diets, number one, it's very difficult for people to stay on. And number two, there are inherent deficiencies.
Sure.
So carnivore, you could have a polyphenol problem. You could have a microbiome issue because are you getting enough fiber? There are a host of things missing from that. And if we look at stuff like pomegranates, for example, that's not going to be on the carnivore diet, but it's one of the best things you can do to boost a little microbe in your gut called Akkermansia. And Akkermansia, when balanced appropriately, because microbiome is really about dysbiosis, balance versus imbalance, helps kill cancer cells. So why are you going to cut that out? What are you doing that for? Now, if you're just vegan, sarcopenia is a huge problem, especially as we age, especially for women who are also more prone to anemia because we bleed every month. Sorry, I hope that's not too graphic, but we're far more prone to that than men. Men are actually better off giving blood every so often. So they're less prone and they'll do better on a vegan diet than women do.
Wow.
But why in the world are you going to give up protein? In fact, if you want to speak to someone about that, I recommend the work of Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. It's just brilliant discussing this. I've interviewed all of these people, so I read all the books. I know all the positions. So to be truthful, I think the evidence strongly shows a Mediterranean diet to be superior. What are you getting there? It's not about hummus. What are you actually getting? You're getting all three macros in their idyllic form. So you've got ocean caught fish, wild salmon, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats like olive oil, nuts and seeds. You've got complex carbohydrates like lentils. So you're getting tons of fiber, all three macros in their best form, all the benefits of those things, all of the micronutrients that are in those foods. It's a very varied diet, which has a host of benefits. That's what I have seen, both anecdotally and with regard to the data, be the best for longevity. And last but not least, if we reference the blue zones, that is kind of the common theme. It's not Mediterranean, but rather ancestral. And ancestral means the same things. You're eating whole food, you're eating all three macros, and it's relatively varied.
Basically, not food from a bag.
That's number one. That's all the way over here on the spectrum. And the last thing I will say on this is Steve Jobs also only ate fruit and ended up passing away from cancer. So we got to be careful with these kind of, I find that very successful people fall into these kind of, I only eat broccoli blessed by Tibetan monks in the third phase of a crescent moon. Most people can't do that anyway. So
it's something very interesting about you that you don't have that extremism in your personality.
No, I don't believe in it. I am the consummate moderate. I think that everything in life is a U-shaped curve, whether we're talking about vitamins or we're talking about politics. Not enough of one thing, Goldilocks zone, too much of the same thing. It's all like that. We could be talking about vitamin A, we could be talking about caffeine, or we could be talking about political concepts, or ideologies. That's what I've evidenced. Ironically, you have this book in front of you. That's the conclusion I came to. This book is about longevity, interviewing some of the top researchers in the space, and balance was the top key.
When I think about fitness coaches, I think of teaching discipline. I think of teaching ways to motivate people. But I also now start thinking about moral discipline. And I wonder if you see a connection between all of those things, because you obviously have taught discipline and you have taught motivation. And now you're starting to teach moral discipline in your new line of work as a political commentator. Do you see a relationship between those things?
Somewhat. Where I think the discipline would fall is the desire to lean into clickbait. Very appealing, especially for young people. The desire to remain tribal, because it's so safe. When you don't belong to one group or another, who's got your back? It feels good when someone has your back, let me tell you. Megyn Kelly's had my back a few times when I've needed it, and I I really appreciate it. I respect it. Dave Rubin has done that for me. There are a host of people that have done that. Brandon Tatum. And you need support, man. And you kind of worry that if you push back on something that they are down for, when you need that helping hand, is it going to be there? But at the end of the day, you have to be disciplined enough to do what you know is right in your heart. Ironically, I have no interest in politics. I have zero interest in ever becoming a politician. I think it is a filthy business. The reason that I have entered this arena is because they made health political. And that's how it began. So in the Venn diagram of health and politics, you kind of had everything from healthy at any size, which is a lie and a big food psyop. You had biological males in women's sports, which I owned a sports medicine facility. I know factually that that's going to greatly compromise fairness and in some cases safety. And you have to determine, like, where does inclusion fall on, on these three priorities? Which one's kind of coming first here? I felt obligated to speak out about that. I understand the medical concerns with regard to giving kids who are gender dysphoric off-label cancer drugs and how it compromises their brain development, their bone development, permanent infertility in most cases, sexual dysfunction and permanence as well. You could be well-meaning, but not understand this stuff. And I felt like I don't have a choice. Like, I have to say something here. I have to. And so I felt like if I don't do this, I don't know how I live with it. I know better. I know I need to say something. I know I need to support the people who are saying something. And it's not fun at all. There are days I'm like, should I have taken this on? My God, like, my wife's getting it. My kids are getting it. I drug them into this mix. Like, my business partner's getting it. Everyone's getting or suffering from the effect of my decisions. And there's the wondering. So part of it is a moral discipline for sure. And part of it is just an obligation. Like, there's right and there's wrong. Very little of that is nuanced.
When you talk about the chemical castration of children and that whole movement of pushing gender dysphoria on children, the narrative was, listen to the child. The adult doesn't really know. The adult doesn't really get it. The adult just needs to support the child in the child's dreams and wishes, not show up as an adult. And I used to say, Jillian, really, raise your hand if you think you were smarter when you were 10 years old than you are today. Nobody would raise their hand. And I would walk into these left-wing mama groups and I would say, what are you doing? Do you really believe that your child knows better than you what is best for them? How are you believing these experts that are telling you that that is so? And so obviously the adults do need to show up. Sometimes children do need to hear a lecture from an adult. And oftentimes parents are so focused on being so cool and so accepted that they are so afraid to raise their hand or shut down their laptop and walk off the set.
That's a separate issue. But my goodness, I mean, we can
We'll
get to that. We can get into that.
But it's moral discipline, right? That's what moral discipline is.
Here's the other game they play, though, with gender-affirming care, is that the so-called experts, and I'm speaking in particular about the WPATH, what is it, the World Professional Association of Trans Health, I believe they're called, will come out and say, no. Your child will kill themselves if you don't affirm this.
Yeah.
You're thinking, but UCLA's doing it, and Johns Hopkins is doing it. All these very credible, like, elite medical institutions are doing this, and the experts are telling me my child's going to commit suicide. And what they don't know, and I don't blame them for this, is they don't understand that this is $1 billion business for Big Pharma. It's a $1 billion business and growing, just off one drug, for example. So know that. They don't understand that there's something called the HEI score that runs through the Human Rights Campaign, that is largely funded by Pfizer, that gives these medical institutions a score. And it has to do with, how are they providing gender-affirming care? And if they're not providing it in the ways that the Human Rights Campaign thinks they should be, they get a ding on that score. That ding on that score has ramifications with regard to grant money, research money, funding, all of these things. So there's also a concern there. There's a cancellation for doctors who speak out. Dr. Hilary Cass, who was one of the top pediatricians in the United Kingdom, was tapped by the NHS over there to do an analysis, a systemic review of all the studies on gender-affirming care. I think it's like 400 pages, and I believe it took her years. And what she found is that these weren't really good studies. They didn't go on for long enough. There were significant concerns that no one brought up. And in putting that research forward, the United Kingdom and countries all over Europe began to pull away from the medicalization of gender dysphoria. Parents don't know that this can greatly impact the brain development of their child, their bone development, their fertility. They don't know these things. And when doctors are telling you, no, don't worry. And if you don't get on board, your child will kill yourself. And then what they also don't know is that Michael Schellenberger from Public dropped the WPATH files, exposing the fact that these so-called experts knew for a fact that this was highly questionable, that parents and kids don't comprehend the consequences of these choices, that, all kinds of hideousness. And what I would simply say is, if you know the data and you really truly understand what's in the Cass review, you've read the WPATH files, you understand everything behind this, and you choose to move forward, that would be surprising and alarming. But most parents don't know that.
There's no informed
consent. And they're getting
consent.
pressured into these decisions. And that's where I thought it's my job to tell them, hey, read the Cass review. Hey, look at the WPATH files. Hey, look at these studies and what it's going to do to your kids. If your child grows up and makes that decision, listen, I'm a 90s liberal. God bless. I don't care. You're an adult. You're making a decision for yourself. Do what you want to do. This is none of my business. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. But a 14-year-old cannot comprehend these choices, and the medication affects them differently than it does a 24-year-old whose brain and bones are developed already. And I appreciate, it's difficult for them to go through puberty. You know what else is really difficult? When their brain doesn't develop properly and their teeth are cracking in their mouth. That's not great either.
I watched the attack on you when you raised your hand and decided to walk away from the left. I remember the videos that went viral where you said basically you fit the victim bingo narrative that they wanted, and you're walking away. You became more political. Now that Maha has been in office for a few months, are you happy with what you're saying? Do you feel that on the medical side, you're getting what you wanted?
Okay. Let me start out by giving credit where credit is due. Just a few things off the top, right? You've got reform to SNAP, removing stuff like soda and junk food. Great. You've got an evaluation of the garbage in baby formula. Overwhelmingly necessary. You've got reform on the GRAS rule, which is the generally recognized as safe rule, which is a loophole in the FDA that allows big food to push thousands of chemicals into our food supply that they vouch for personally. No oversight from the government whatsoever through this loophole, right? Oh, you say it's good? It's safe? Okay, I believe you. Perfect. Come on in. Great. You've got the removal of a mandate of the COVID vaccine for kids. Because if you actually look at the data, it is in fact contraindicated. And this is coming from Dr. Marty Makary and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who are in charge of the NIH, the FDA, top-notch education, Stanford, Harvard, like these guys, Johns Hopkins, I believe. Like these guys are, you don't get better than that. And if you want to question it, and you're like, I don't believe you, kids need COVID, go beyond a Google search, go beyond the ChatGPT, who this morning apparently told me Kennedy it's never has run HHS. Because I was like, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I want to refresh on the things that have been done. So I showed up today and just give you some highlights. So you cannot trust that. You have to go deeper than that. If they haven't removed the COVID shot, you can still get it. Parents can still get it for their kids. It's not harder to get. That's not true. He's done, looking at places that can ban adding fluoride to water. And my God, the narrative around this is bananas. What I would simply ask people to do is a little bit of homework. There's a great episode, by the way, that Huberman did, who's like, talk about, this guy's not political. He did a great episode on fluoride and if it needs to be ingested for oral health or if it needs to be topically applied. And turns out that it's really just needed topically. I do your own homework on it. But what's really scary and what I can promise you is that the fluoride being added to water is not pharmaceutical grade fluoride. So we could even sit here and go, what happens when we get too much? How much is too much? What are the concerns? There's a robust amount of data to show that too much fluoride can actually lower the IQ in our kids. It can have deleterious effects on thyroid function. Very strange that so many women have a thyroid condition around the country. But again, it's conjecture. What I can tell you though is it's toxic waste. Literally. The stuff being added to your water is a byproduct of toxic waste that is sold to municipalities and dumped in your water. Something about that should rub you the wrong way. That's something that they're bringing to the forefront. And I think that those are significant things. I also think, much like weight loss, and I'll explain the analogy in a second, when people start eating better, and it's like, I didn't lose enough weight. Okay, but what you're not appreciating is you stopped gaining weight, right? When Xavier Becerra ran HHS, they were trying to remove all age limits for gender-affirming care on kids. Point being, things are not actively getting worse with the current administration as they have been in previous administrations. And again, this is where I would signal this kind of selective outrage on the left. He's not a doctor. Xavier Becerra is not a doctor. How many of the former secretaries of HHS were MDs or had an MD or a bachelor's of science? Like, they're lawyers, they're lobbyists. I think one, maybe. I had looked this up previously, and maybe one out of the last, I don't know how many.
It's usually people who understand the issue very well and know how to communicate it to the public, which sometimes experts don't know how to communicate to the public, and so nobody understands anything.
Right.
Which is exactly the problem and very possibly what the government wants, people not understanding anything.
Right. So, listen, these are all the things that are moving in the right direction. There are a lot of things that are not getting done. There are a lot of things that will never get done. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, these guys in Washington all kiss the same ring, dude. They are the uniparty. As you and I are sitting here discussing sex changes for kids, they're all giving immunity to big ag and big chemical for glyphosate. All of them. So these are the things. They're all bought and paid for. They are. I'm not saying Kennedy is. He's not. But it's going to be a Herculean endeavor, given that fact. And it is a fact. And I think we need to appreciate that.
Yeah. When you talk about the magnitude of the endeavor and the amount of problems that we have, I think that the MAGA coalition was a coalition with many different priorities. And everybody came in with their own priorities, and now they're expecting that their priorities are going to be prioritized. And it's not that easy. I'm not sure that you can expect every single one of the secretaries to be able to just run with things. And so I think to the point that you make is that we do need to mitigate expectations, but specifically we need to mitigate the expectations that ultimately what brought me into conservatism, and that is the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. The idea that anybody in government is going to come and save us is ridiculous. We just need to limit the government. We need them to just not spend more or not pass more laws or not take on more power and ultimately preserve our own power. But as long as we just rely on the government to fix things for us, especially when it comes to health, we're going to continue to be hugely disappointed.
I do want more regulation when it comes to health, but hear me out. Because they're the problem. And here's what I mean. And I had this conversation with Lee Zeldin at the EPA. I was like, dude, if I get diagnosed with cancer, it's not because I didn't eat salad. And it isn't because I didn't exercise, okay? It's because of the crap in that water. It's because of the chemicals off-gassing from the carpet. It's because of the garbage in this makeup that I'm wearing. It's because of all the things that are out of my control that they allow. And this is where you should not have a generally recognized as safe rule. It should be a that's not food, that's illegal rule. They give an open door. You have a revolving door policy between industry and government. The Kennedy is working to effectively close. But having said that, instead of making the government work for those guys, make it work for us. They don't see it your way. Oh, they see the value in the government big time, and they're using it against us. So I'm simply saying, if the government's going to be involved, get involved for us.
Yeah, no, it's
Do
anarchy.
your job for us.
It's anarchy with a rubber stamp. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And then, we see the rubber stamp and we think it's okay, but actually you don't really know what's going on.
No, you're right.
My biggest concern is watching kids and seeing the obesity rate. I have many friends, moms and dads, who don't know how to speak to their children about weight gain. It's scary because you don't want to put the fear in them. I remember when I was a kid, there were a lot of kids with anorexia and bulimia and body image issues. And I think that those of us who grew up in the 80s and in the 90s, when we saw that, now as parents, we don't want to do that to our kids. With that said, parents don't know how to talk to their children about food. They're afraid of food fear.
There are two kinds of kids. My position on this has evolved. So here's what I mean. My son's a beanpole. My ex can eat whatever she wants. She gave birth to him. And I am ruthless in our conversations about food. I'm like, are you seriously going to eat that? That's disgusting. And it like blue gummies. You know what I mean? And he laughs because he's literally, if I brought this child in the room, he's shredded. I'm like, this is going to be a good looking kid. Little 8-pack, he's going to be, it's a good looking kid. And he's shredded and he does nothing for it. He's naturally athletic. He's just like my ex. It's infuriating. And with him, there's no body image stuff. I'm just like, what are you doing? That's disgusting. Yeah. And there's I know my son, there's no internalization there. And I try to role model being healthy. I don't keep that stuff in the house. I educate him on it. I try to give him alternatives. And ultimately, kids are going to be kids. He loves baseball. He wants to play D1. I'm like, you're going to be lucky if you play D3, dude. Like, do you realize how hard it is to play D3? I promise you, the guys you look up to, the Scoobals and the Skeens, they're not eating blue gummies, okay? When you look at these athletes, they're breathing rarefied air. They're certainly not eating blue gummies. Yeah, so I try to inspire him using the people he looks up to, and I lead by example. My daughter, on the other hand, has some of the same issues that I had as a kid, where, she definitely has emotional connections to food. And that one's more delicate.
Do you think that's innate or it's cultural?
It has to do with the things that she went through, which, I won't get into crazy detail.
So it's environmental, not
let's put it this way.
Innate.
You got a kid. I'm just going to say this. You have a child that is adopted, obviously. She comes from part of the developing world where she was in a literal orphanage until she was 2 years old. Obviously, she experienced an insane trauma, losing her birth mother. I'm not quite sure when. Not knowing who her birth father is pretty awful. And I'm just, I'm not putting words in her mouth. I'm saying, like, given all these things, right? How would you feel? What would you know? What would you experience? You can't really contend with those emotions. There has to be like an inherent deep-seated sadness that I know she's yet to kind of really reckon with. And, you don't want to push too hard when she's ready, when, we've had her, in therapy in anticipation of these issues, and she doesn't really love it. She's like, Mama. And the kid's thriving, but I can see the connection with food because I have it. I understand it. I recognize it right away. And, these are the conversations where it's more of an identification where I'm like, honey, listen, I get it. I know the feeling. I know it, I've been there. There are certain things I do to safeguard myself. Like I don't keep the stuff around. I don't keep it in the house. I turn to other things. I have other outlets. And in these instances, I give her tools, but it's not about her body. It's about when we do a bag of Cheetos or whatever the heck, we don't keep Cheetos in the house, but it's like if it's some sort of organic cheese doodle, which we do have in the house, it's about a handful of cheese doodles, not the bag. So I'm like,
So you do bring it up. You talk to her about
absolutely.
the food.
All the time.
At what age do you think it's okay to start bringing it up?
Because immediately.
Sometimes, parents will say, well, she's only 7, she's only 8, she's only 9. By the way, oftentimes it's with girls that we're afraid to talk about food.
But boys do have these issues, just not my son.
Yeah, I think
actually.
Definitely boys have these issues too.
Yeah.
I think our fear to talk about food is usually with the girls. We are afraid that they cannot handle it because we're afraid that they're going to have body image issues. Not to say that boys don't have body image issues, but I think we are, in general, as an educator, I have seen parents be more concerned and afraid to speak to their girls about food. And sometimes these are girls who don't necessarily have a background or an adverse background, I would say. I mean, sometimes it's just
teenage stuff, eating garbage, being
girls,
a kid.
Yeah, they're a kid. Or some people just like food. They just enjoy it. And some kids just find comfort in food. Sometimes it's societal, right? Every single party we have is always about food. Every celebration is always food and sugar, right? Like we have signaled to our children that the way to celebrate is to eat cake,
100%.
right? To eat a pie. And so some of it is that. And some of it is it's just normal. Food is yummy.
But the psychology of those kids can vary. And that's what I'm saying. So how you tackle it, you kind of got to know the kid. But the number one thing that you should be doing is role modeling, period. And you don't need to keep it in the house. Like we don't keep organic cheese, whatever the hell they are, Happy Smiles or whatever this brand is.
Yeah.
That's in the house. Because if you go too crazy with it, if you're too restrictive.
Right? That's what we're all afraid of.
Yeah, but you don't want to be too restricted. You want to practice balance, education, moderation. With my son, of course they're going to have sugar, but it's can we do it 80-20? 80% of the food's good, 20% of the food is not so great, but it's not filled with blue food dye. Balance, education.
Do you think there is an age, whether it's 10 or maybe past puberty, where you become more instructional about it with kids?
No.
Or do you start
immediately? Start immediately.
Pre-K. As soon as you can speak to them.
Yeah, absolutely. They should know what's in the food. They should know what is food and what isn't. You should be, luckily when they're young, you can make decisions for them. Now, my kids go out the door. I'm like, I didn't see anyone pack their lunch today, which means they're eating at the cafeteria. And my daughter's like, I forgot. I'm like, you did not forget. What do you mean you forgot? Go in there and pack your lunch right now. And it's I can't control what she does when she goes to school, but I can control what's in the house.
Yeah.
I can control what I give them money for when they go to friend's place or when they go to, that school cafeteria. So you actually have to drill it in when they're younger.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, what I said to my daughter, this is, I don't know if you've watched this show. It's called Lioness. Have you ever seen that show?
No.
It's really good. It's on Paramount Plus. The Lioness stars Zoe Saldana. And there's a scene where her 15-year-old gets in a car accident and they find out when the kid's in the hospital she's pregnant. I'm getting somewhere with this, I promise. And she's sitting at the kid's hospital bed and she's like, this is everything we told you about. This is everything we've tried to protect you from. She wasn't being mean to the kid, but she's like, at some point, baby, life just jumped up and took a bite out of you. And what that felt like to me was if these kids want to get around you when they're older, they can get around you. I've said this to my kids. I'm like, listen, I can't be there every minute of the day. I can't be controlling you every minute of the day. I know you know that.
Yeah.
At some point, you've got to internalize these things I'm telling you and make these decisions for yourself. And that's going to happen sooner than later. When they're 3, they're 4, they're 5. You control what's on the plate. When they're 15, forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Well, it's amazing how that is so connected to everything, not just food, when it comes to raising our kids and talking to them about things. And, I think that people who are watching this right now are wondering, how do they talk to their teenagers about the extremism that we're seeing online in our society right now? You come from come from the intolerant left. You left the intolerant left because the left was so intolerant. I don't know if you have buyer's remorse. I know you call yourself a purple person, a purple voter. Now you are on the right. You're watching your kids interact with social media, assuming they're old enough now that they're doing so.
We limit it.
And we are seeing extremism on the right as well.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to react to it, because when I bring this up, people have told me, you can't keep lecturing these disaffected young men. They don't want to hear from an old lady or an old man. And therefore, you need to listen to them and you need to learn from them, which I don't disagree. I do think that we need to listen to our kids.
I was going to say, listen.
But I want to just tell you, Jillian, that statement sounds very familiar to me, because when I was teaching in left-wing classrooms, I was told that the child should not be lectured to. I was told that the child knows best. And my instinct was, well, if I'm not going to give them a lecture on what is good and what is true and what is noble, who is going to give them the lecture? Are they going to be lecturing me? So how do we not take that form of extremism, or frankly, non-common sense idea that the youth doesn't need us to step in and provide them with wisdom?
Oh my goodness. It's actually a flip side of the exact same coin right now.
You're complete
seeing
mirror.
Mom Donnie, Fuentes. And I know this will make people very angry simply because Mom Donnie's not saying, go rape women. They want it. But my point is simply that he is saying, literally saying in a rap song, my love to the Holy Land Five, you better look them up. The Holy Land Five are 5 guys who went to jail for funding Hamas. So what does Hamas do? I don't know. Kill babies? I mean, rape women? So you are celebrating guys who do that. That's radical. Sorry. Even though you're pretending like none of that actually happened, it did, you said it. It's in one of your songs. I've played the clip on one of my podcasts. And then you've got Fuentes, who doesn't even try to walk it back, right? And these two are very far to the left and to the right, and they are celebrated amongst the youth. They are, period. They are. And you have to ask, why is this happening? Part of it is the fact that they do feel disenfranchised by capitalism. They think it's bought and paid for. They don't see it working for them. Charlie Kirk actually talked about this. I just watched a clip of it where he, in fact, told Tucker Carlson about Mom Donnie and predicted the win, because he's like, they're the rent culture. Like, people are practicing survivalist math in New York every month. How are they going to make ends meet? So when they can't provide for themselves, they're going to turn to the most radical things. I ran into a buzzsaw on CNN because the point I'm trying to make is, when you demonize white people, young kids don't have the intellectual ability to perceive, this is a race bait game. This is a clickbait game. Instead, it's like white men bad, white boys bad, white people bad. Young boys hear that, and they're going to lean into the Nick Fuentes of the world. And that is deeply alarming. It is something we should all be alarmed about. Adults, what I've seen on both sides, and this is upsetting, is that they're afraid of obsolescence. Chuck Schumer's like, AOC's going to primary me. She's going to primary you because you're a wuss, dude. You are a spineless wuss. If you had a pair and you stood up, okay, you would get respect. Fetterman's doing it. I'm like, wow, impressed. There are a lot of things I don't agree with him about. I'm impressed about that. He's like, yeah, people on the right are not Nazis. People on the, this is crazy. You can't shut down the government. We're not doing this. Impressive. Okay, that's a man. That's a grown-up. That's somebody that you look up to. Charlie Kirk did this.
Yeah.
And I discovered Charlie Kirk because of my son. And I started to hear Charlie in the background in the YouTube reels. And I'm like, who is this guy? I'm hearing that he's, a sexist and a racist, and all these horrible things. I better look into this. This isn't good. So I'm like, honey, what are you watching? And he's like, oh my God, this guy is, he thinks it's funny. And I start watching it. And I'm like, well, hold on. And I'm listening to Charlie talk about how much he loves his wife, how much he cherishes his daughters, how to be chivalrous on a date. And I'm thinking, well, hold on a second. This is way better than the rap song you were listening to in the car 5 seconds ago, talking about bitches and hoes. Wait a minute. I don't have a problem with this. And then it's like, oh, he's holding a Black leadership summit. And when you investigate what his concerns were about the Civil Rights Act, it has nothing to do with equal opportunity for people of color. It's about voter ID and men and women's sports. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And it turns out that Charlie Kirk was actually the manhole cover on the Nick Fuentes group.
Yeah, he was the dam that prevented the sewage from making it into the pool.
And now that he's gone, look what's filling that vacuum. So I was a little worried about this because I thought, okay, my son loved Charlie Kirk. And this is a fatherless boy, which is nothing that I think is right, but nevertheless, it's where we are. I wanted it to be a friend of the family. Long story short, I lost that fight. I have a fatherless son. And kids need dads. Kids need moms. They need love first and foremost. But I sure do wish, that there was a very strong male figure in his life. I appreciate that's an ideal scenario. I sure do wish it for him. And I see what he leans into because of that void. Now, whether the kid has 2 gay moms or not all dads are great and not all dads are there. Kids need a role model. That's why they like Joe Rogan, for example. So I'm a little concerned that he's going to find this Nick Fuentes character and maybe start leaning into some of his ideas. And there's a momentum there, and it's cool. And even Nick Fuentes says, I was anti-Semitic before it was cool. He tells you who he is. Yeah. Believe him. It's not a joke. It's not meant to be funny. And when you look at the comments that the Groypers make, they also tell you who they are. They hate women. They hate Blacks. They hate Latinos. They hate Jews. The list goes on and on. They hate gays. They mean it. It's not a joke. It's not mistaken. It's all there, and they mean it. So I put Nick Fuentes on in the car. And I was like, this is the guy that Charlie hated. And I want you to listen to this. And I just thought okay, I want to see if any of this, I'm like, this is the guy that Charlie hated. I just want to, I was going to listen to it. And Nick Fuentes is talking about how women want to be raped. And they want to be roughed up. And I'm looking at his face. I'm like, okay, And he goes, please tell me this guy doesn't have a girlfriend, Mom. And I was like, yes, thank you, God. Oh my God. And he goes, is this what people thought of Charlie? And I was like, some people did because they didn't know better. And he goes, well, as gross as it is to say, I can see why some of them thought that he deserved to get shot. And he's like, I would never want that. He's like, but if they thought that Charlie was like this guy,
yeah,
it kind of makes sense. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. But the reality is a lot of boys are leaning into this. And if he was leaning into it, it would be a conversation. Why do you feel this way? Why are you feeling disenfranchised? At least in our home. This is not how men behave. Who are the role models that you look up to? This is not how global citizens behave. And how do you inspire these young boys to be heroes? Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example of one of the issues that I famously took on this year with regard to CNN, and I didn't really have a chance to litigate any of it, nor was I planning to. But if we were to tackle racism in America, and we were to look at something like the 1800s, yes, slavery was awful. There's nobody who's saying that it isn't. But the truth is, this is the truth. It's straight out of the 1860 census. Less than 2% of white Americans did own slaves. Now you can say, well, hold on. Don't try to diminish this. No one's trying to diminish it. But I'm telling you that the vast majority of white people did not perpetrate this evil. Oh, but the entire South, they fought and died to keep it. They in fact did. But all of the North fought and died to end it.
And died. To end it.
And then they're like, well, they really just wanted to preserve the Union. I'm like, okay, let's play the chicken and egg. What was compromising the Union? This was compromising the Union, slavery, because it was morally reprehensible. And guys like Benjamin Franklin in his later years was like, this is disgusting. This is awful. Like, teach your kid to be like the guys that died for this. Obviously, we don't want them to die, but give them a hero that they can identify with. Don't tell them they're a bad guy and have them default to, well, if you think I'm bad, F you, I'm going to lean into this group over here. Hey, we as white people have stood throughout history shoulder to shoulder, at least American history, if that's what we're talking about, with our Black fellow Americans. Where there was dark, there was also light. Even in the 60s, you had white guys getting killed right alongside Black guys. You had preachers in the South getting their homes burned down by the KKK, just like Black people. This is not about saying this is awful. This is not about putting white people's feelings at the center of it, but it is about giving our young white boys heroes to role model.
Right. Is the reason you bring the comparison between Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk because the things that people would accuse Charlie Kirk of are the things that actually Nick Fuentes is doing. And by bringing him into our tent, it's making it easier to attack people like Charlie Kirk?
Two things are going to come of this. If we just table the morality of it, right? So it's like, well, we don't believe in censorship. No one's suggesting that you censor him. There's a suggestion of a pushback, right?
Okay, but I want to bring that up.
Okay, do you want me to? I can litigate it now, or I can litigate it after.
You benefited from the tolerance of the right. Okay, you're a benefactor of it.
Yep.
You don't hit all the marks on the right.
Not even close.
You were brought in. You spoke at Turning Point USA events.
100%.
Charlie brought you in.
Yep.
I am sure that he got plenty of pushback because of your lifestyle.
Agree.
And so you benefited from this open forum, this open debate that Charlie stood for.
Yes.
And so the big tent, as we call it. Should the big tent have borders? Does the big tent have borders?
Well, tell me something.
Or does the big tent allow all ideas to come in and be debated, and then the market of ideas gets to essentially dictate what is acceptable or not acceptable?
What are the statistics or morality structures that you would reference in a debate about rape?
There is no debate about rape. Rape is bad.
Oh, what about Black people going to jail for being Black?
No debate about.
No? What about, I don't know, celebrating Stalin, who killed millions of people? Like, debate there? No. So I'm confused. Where's the debate on these ideas? This is what Nick Fuentes stands for. These are not political concepts to be debated. These are hateful assertions. Now, this is the First Amendment here in America, right? We have the First Amendment, and that's wonderful. I'm not asking for Nick Fuentes to lose his platform. He's existed for quite some time. Patrick Bet-David interviewed him. Piers Morgan has interviewed him. Personally, I see no value in me interviewing him. But the value I see in them taking it on is that they dismantle his positions and they're aspirational men. So my son likes Patrick Bet-David. If Patrick Bet-David says Nick Fuentes isn't cool, Nick Fuentes isn't cool. If Charlie says Nick Fuentes isn't cool, Nick Fuentes isn't cool. Charlie didn't want to platform those ideas. He chose not to. Some bigger individuals did. If you're going to engage with people that hold positions that are irrefutably unacceptable to a civilized society, it is your job to have counter speech and dismantle those positions. It is your job. It is your responsibility. Now, we can table whether or not people agree with me. I'm going to tell you what the fallout's going to be, and I am sure of this. Number one, young boys will fall victim to this. They already are, to the tune of millions. You want to know what this is doing? This will get women raped. This will push a race war. Real people will be harmed from this rhetoric because it's not jokes at all. The KKK hurt people. Nazis hurt people. People will be hurt from this. It is a lie to say that they would not be. It's cowardice to say that that would not be the case and that these are just benign ideas. No, they're not. We've seen these ideas play out throughout history, and people get killed and hurt because of these ideas. If you really don't give a crap about that, you will lose elections unquestionably, because we saw this on the left. When the left started to go bonkers and started cutting the boobs off of 13-year-old girls, nobody in leadership is going to say something. When, you've got a socialist who's going to run New York, and you guys know it's not going to work. You know it. You kind of don't want to endorse him, but you kind of feel like you have to. You're not sure what to do. Obama made a phone call. Obama thinks he's great, but Obama didn't really say something. We know it's a mistake. And you look like a coward. Everybody has watched the left descend into madness because the common sense people are afraid of their own obsolescence. They won't call it out.
Why?
Because Chuck Schumer knows he's going to get primaried by AOC, because Gavin Newsom tried it and it didn't work. So now he's the face of the resistance. He sat with Charlie Kirk and he said, my son loves you. My son wanted to stay home from school. He thinks you're so great. They had a lovely, amicable conversation. And now he's like, oh, my son doesn't really like Charlie. And he's just familiar with him. He went from the guy that was going to sit down with conservatives and try to bridge the gap because he knows that's actually what the country needs. But when it wasn't popular among the far left in his party, he caved immediately and became the face of the resistance. The right is doing the same thing.
So even though most Americans are not extreme, I would probably say that they're more purple, many
Moderate.
Mixed marriages and nobody identifies with one particular color or whatever it is, right? Everybody's a mix.
Interracial marriage.
But the politicians are feeling like they have to toe a more extreme narrative in order to gain favor with the audience online.
Well, think about what's happening. Look what Nick Fuentes is saying he's going to do to J.D. Vance. He's like, we're going to make sure you lose. We're going to show up at every primary, and we're going to make sure you don't get the nomination.
Well, I can't even imagine what kind of pressure they're putting on their family, Usha and J.D. Vance. I can't imagine what they're going through. I pray for them every weekend. It is so horrendous, the attack on them.
It's constant, by the way, with regard to the family piece.
Yes.
This is a new weapon in the culture war of going after the family. I have now experienced it personally. If I had my phone, I could show you something my daughter sent me on Sunday that involves obviously her and how she's a house slave. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I'm sorry, honey. She's like, no, Mom, her friend sent it to her. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, this is my fault. I felt compelled to take this on, and, you guys are collateral damage. And and I explained to her why I took it on, and I felt obligated and this and that. But of course it's like, well, Jillian Michaels is a white supremacist.
Right.
So she must have just adopted this child to be a house slave. Then my son has been called a little Nazi. So of course we locked up all his pages and all of that. My wife, people are telling her like they're going to kill her. And that's just me, little me. Imagine when you are so famous that you're second in line to be the leader of the free world. You think his wife signed up for this? It's disgusting, and it should be off limits.
Well, I mean, we all should have freedom of speech, but we also have to have morality. Yeah. We have to have, as I say, moral discipline. We have to have moral discipline. And by the way, this moral discipline lacks both on the left and on the right.
Does.
And every human comes in all shapes and colors and with all kinds of good and bad. We're seeing the good and bad. And this is why I really wanted to talk to you, because you do have the background and the experience of pressing the eject button when you see that things are getting really extreme, and the experience of pushing against your own camp sometimes. And it's not an easy thing because, we talk about the friendships and the people that, backed you up and people who backed PragerU up. And these are good friends of ours.
I know.
And it is a real issue. We got to have moral courage. One of the things that you mentioned is that Nick Fuentes was invited on Patrick Bet-David's show. And Pat interviewed him. And would you say that had political implications for the right? I mean, I don't think anybody accused Pat Bet-David.
But here's why.
But
tell me.
Why are we going after Tucker? If Tucker
Simple
Tucker interviews Nick Fuentes, everybody goes
simple
hysteria.
Answer. Very
but
simple.
PBD can go and interview Nick Fuentes, and nobody seems to care. And you have the gladiators of Piers Morgan who go on for free and punch each other in the face on a regular basis for him to benefit. Nobody cares if Piers Morgan does it, but they're going after Tucker. Are people being unfair to Tucker?
Here, there are two key differences. Number one, PBD platforms everyone. So PBD will have Netanyahu on, and PBD will have Nick Fuentes on. PBD will push back aggressively. Tucker does neither of those two things in this particular scenario/interview. So he will have someone like Ted Cruz on, who he disagrees with, but you aggressively saw him dissect and dismantle Ted Cruz. Where was that for Nick Fuentes? That's where the people like me are going, wait, hold on. Did you catch the part about where he said he admires Stalin? Tucker, now's the moment, dude. Right here.
Right.
This is
how many people did Stalin murder?
10+ million, by the way. I looked this up with my son the other day because he's like, who is this guy? Hasn't gotten there in history yet. I'm like, he's an equivalent Pol Pot, Mao, Hitler. Yeah. Here's a great book, Confronting Evil by Bill O'Reilly. I'll get it for you on audiobook. He's in there. Come on. That's the difference. PBD is going to say, well, you know what? I disagree with you. I think what the Jews have done, despite everything they've been through, is aspirational. I want to know how they achieve this level of success. That's what PBD does. Tucker didn't do that.
Yeah, PBD doesn't propagate victimhood or conspiracy or darkness.
Here's another thing. You mentioned earlier about when I walked off of her take, and we haven't really discussed that yet. PBD had the exact same conversation on his podcast, except with some key fundamental differences. He showed both sides of the facts. So, for example, it came out of a publication that is infamous called The Gray Zone with this journalist named Max Blumenthal. And they were the ones that made the assertion Netanyahu had offered $150 million to Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk had turned it down. There's no proof of this whatsoever. But what we do know for a fact is that the Gray Zone is propaganda for Russia and Iran. Do some homework on it. PBD puts that out there. And he's like, interesting. This is who these guys are. He puts that out there. That didn't happen in my experience on her take. I was the one who put that out there. And then Lindy Lee was like, who
was on that show? So I remember this clip going viral. All I remember was you smacking down your laptop, picking it up in the middle of the show and walking out. Why did you do that? What happened?
You know what happened? I was just actually talking to Dr. Phil about this morning. This is so interesting. And he brought up Biggest Loser first. And I talked about when I quit Biggest Loser. And I quit Biggest Loser because a contestant walked out at the Biggest Loser finale looking dangerously thin. I'd never trained her. In fact, I never really had any interaction with her. She had trained with a guy named Dolvet. And I didn't know, we don't they don't keep us in the loop on who's coming in what weight because they want the trainers to be surprised. We don't know. We're not the doctor. We have no idea what's going on. So, we did kind of break the rules a little bit and talk to our own contestants behind the scenes. And I would always kind of work to bring them in at a very healthy weight. So when Rachel Fredrickson, that was her name, had walked out on stage looking dangerously, unhealthily thin, I said, okay, you know what? I can sit here and tell you I didn't do it. I didn't know. I didn't do it. I didn't know. But I work on this show. I profit off of this platform and I'm guilty by proxy. And I quit and I never went back. And I was ashamed to be associated in that moment. And I got in huge fights with the network. And I actually published the letters after the Netflix documentary came out, where the head of NBC at the time told me, if you don't stop, denouncing this, we're going to end our relationship with you and we'll be talking to our lawyers about you. I have the email. I can give it to you. You can put it up. The only other time in my life I felt equally humiliated and ashamed to be associated with something was in that moment when I shut the laptop and I walked off the show.
There you go, moral discipline.
This wasn't something that had not been brewing. I'd been trying, because I started to see, Anna Kasparian moving away from what I perceived to be, in my opinion, a healthy critique of a government into reckless conspiracy theories about the Jews. And it's 9/11. I'm like, no, dude, come on, stop. She started kind of, and there was a rhetoric that started to get more aggressive and a little bit frightening. And Lindy Lee would send me these videos and express her concern. We have to do something. We have to do something. And there was one video where she's like, you think you're God's chosen people, but you behave like demons. And it wasn't hey, Netanyahu's policy is hideous or whatever. The images coming out of Gaza are devastating. It was, you behave like you, the Jew. So
you would think humanity would learn their lesson from saying the Jews.
So these things started to happen and I was concerned. And I thought okay, she has a platform to do this. Let her do this on that platform. And I was like, guys, there's a lot of news in the world. Why don't we focus on some other things in the news? And when this came up, and every week, Israel, everything was Israel's fault. No matter what would come up, somehow.
Why do you think they did it? Is it because
Clicks.
they're getting paid for it? People are like, oh, the Qataris. Do you think it's the Qataris? What is the reason that social media influencers love attacking the Jews and love attacking Israel? I don't believe it's just money.
Here's what I'm going to say with Lindy. So Lindy starts off being like, I'm alarmed, right? We got to do something. I'm like, yeah, you're right. We got to, we got to move away from, this just gets going over the edge. 9/11, when Anna was saying Jews were seen celebrating, this had been debunked. And the guest was alarmed. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. This is, all this had kind of happened prior. And she's like, I'm going to back you up. We got to move away from this stuff. So now Anna wants to discuss, or Amy and Anna, and Lindy want to talk about this rumor regarding Israel. And I'm like, guys, all in writing, by the way. I'm like, this is reckless. It's disrespectful. There's no proof of this. Anti-Semitism is growing. This is not a healthy critique of a government. This is an unfounded conspiracy theory. And there's no reason to engage in this. And Anna says, yeah, there's no evidence. I don't think this is true, but people are talking about it. And I'm like, I will be aggressive in my position that this is dangerous and this is your response. And she's like, you should say that. You should say that. I'm like, okay. So I think they're going to present this in a way that's balanced of hey, Bill Ackman dropped the receipts. That isn't true. And, Max Blumenthal is compromised in all the ways. There's no evidence of this. And I think we're going to go that way. And instead it's we don't believe this, but, and then there's the omission of all these other things I just mentioned. And now I feel like I got bamboozled.
Yeah.
I've brought this up and said, these are my boundaries. This needs to stop. No one's listened to me. I'm furious and I'm humiliated and ashamed to be a part of it. Charlie's pastor had just said, stop with this narrative. Stop. They just buried him the day before. It was gross. It was disrespectful. And when I bring up Max Blumenthal, Lindy actually defends the gray zone. And now I'm super pissed because she was saying to me, but Anna's like she's been in news for years and now all of a sudden she's so popular. And I could see that there was look at all of her followers, and she's on Tucker and she's this, she's that. And she caved in that moment. And I was so disappointed and upset. And I realized, I'm like, what am I doing? And this goes back to, you should debate it. There is no debate. I'm not going to give credence to an unfounded conspiracy theory that breeds anti-Semitism. It's not a debate. I'm going to debate this with you like I'm going to debate Nick Fuentes' positions on women want sexual violence. No, it's a hard no for me. And I was like, I can't be associated with this. I will not be associated with this. And I want the world to know I'm not going to do it. There is no clique that's worth this for me. And it doesn't mean that I'm against. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people who criticize, including with Barry Weiss, who criticize Netanyahu or Smolder, whatever. These, by the way, there's no area of this that I am an expert in with regard to Gaza. But I will engage in numerous conversations about it with the appropriate experts on both sides. That's not what this was. And I know that it's for clicks. That's what it's about.
What is the easiest way to get clicks online?
Hate. Hatred. Rage baiting. Period.
It's a sad thing because social media and technology has built this place, PragerU. We wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be able to share our 5-minute video on Stalin or Pol Pot or all of the things that we have done. We wouldn't be able to raise money. Most of our donations come from online donors. It's all through social media.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, we are teaching our next generation to fall in love with hate.
Do you remember that beginning of our conversation with the U-shaped curve?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right here, it's good.
Yeah.
Right here, it's not so good. Social media also has a U-shaped curve.
And then now you're seeing the extreme left and the extreme right really meet in the same place, the place of hate and conspiracy and darkness.
Yes.
And basically telling young people that they are disaffected, that they are victims. The right is saying the same thing that we've been warning against on the left. You're disaffected. You're a victim. The feds are bad. The government is bad. Nothing can be fixed. Darkness, darkness.
Yeah.
The message that Charlie was trying to bring this entire summer, that's why he would go and meet with Dennis, even in the hospital. He would go and meet with Dennis and he would say, how do we make happiness a moral obligation? How do we bring happiness to these young people? And we are just constantly selling them a steady diet of despair and darkness rather than giving them the very basic solutions, which is family and marriage and happiness and beauty and nature and all of these things.
And giving them the tools to work with the things that are in fact stacked against them. AI, how are we going to work with this?
Yeah.
How can we make this work for us instead of against us? I see the challenge. It's interesting. Let's tackle it together. There are valid concerns that they are facing. There is corruption in the government that doesn't serve them. There is a billionaire class that, listen, look, they are gaming the government to their benefit, unquestionably. These things exist. But how do we help them fight this stuff in a way that's productive, not destructive? There is a real problem.
Yeah.
They are facing real things. And I want to validate those things, but also teach them how to fight back in a way that serves them. This certainly isn't it.
Well, the biggest way to fix your problems is not to focus on the other, but still to focus on you.
100%.
It's always going to be the case. Final question. Who's your role model?
Gosh. This is a tough question. I'm going to give you super cheesy answers. When I get caught in these moments, this is going to sound so gross, and I don't mean it to, but it's actually true. When I get caught in these moments, I actually ask myself, what would Maya Angelou say here? What would MLK say here? What would he say? that doesn't demonize one side. He wouldn't do that. What would he do? I actually looked this up. After they killed Charlie and after, the people were like, this is war, this is this is that. I was like, I actually had a whole conversation with ChatGPT because I just couldn't think clearly. And I'm like, what do you think Martin Luther King would do with like the KKK? Like, what did he do? Like, how would he handle these things? And it said that he would isolate those narratives and sideline them. And that's what needs to happen. It doesn't mean that they don't have their little dark corner of the web, but it does mean that you don't launder this into the mainstream and you don't normalize hate. So I guess without sounding like,
I don't know if you know William Buckley, but that's what William Buckley said.
Yes.
You can't win elections and you can't win for society if you have extremism in your tent.
Maybe I'm looking towards him in the future for some advice.
Yeah. Well, luckily we've had a lot of great role models in America and around the world. But for some bizarre reason, we are now looking at people who have major clicks that are coming from hate as the new role models. And that cannot be the currency for intelligence or for discernment.
I agree with you.
I'm really glad you came in today.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.